Hi, this is Rabbi Chaim Kaufman. Welcome to our 80th installment in the Torah portion of the week. We're holding by Parshas Acharei Mos Kedoshim, another double portion. You have two portions that are said one after another. Sometimes you're going to have that, as we mentioned last week. You'll have that in order to finish the Torah within a year, to finish the entire Torah. So there are certain portions that will be doubled up. This is going to be one of them. And there is quite a bit to speak about. Parshas Acharei Mos talks about the death of the two sons of Aaron. Speaks about the goat that goes to Azazel, the goat that gets killed by Yom Kippur. One gets killed for the sake of Yom Kippur. One gets thrown off the cliff, which is his goat for Azazel. Also speaks about Yom Kippur in general. And then the service outside the tabernacle, prohibition about eating blood, etc. And then in chapter 18, it goes into detail about forbidden practices and traditions, as well as forbidden relationships. Now, what I want to speak about is, at the end of these forbidden relationships, what the Torah does tell us. So we'll go through a little bit here. Here the Torah says, chapter 18, verse 22, says, "You shall not lie with a man as one lies with a woman. It's an abomination. Do not lie with any animal to be contaminated with it. A woman shall not stand before an animal for mating. It is called a perversion. Do not become contaminated through any of these, for through all of these the nations that I expelled before you became contaminated. Land became contaminated, and I recalled its iniquity upon it. My land disgorged its inhabitants." Good word, SAT word, disgorged, throughout its inhabitants. "But you shall safeguard my decrees, my judgments, not commit any of these abominations. The native or the proselyte who lives among you, if the inhabitants of the land who were before you committed all these abominations, and the land became contaminated, let not the land throw you out or disgorge you, having contaminated it, as it threw out the nation that was before you. Anyone commits any of these abominations, people among you will be cut off among the people." Then it says, "You should safeguard my charge, not do any of the abominable traditions that were done before you. Don't contaminate yourself through them. I am Hashem, your God." So this is pretty heavy. First of all, it talks about homosexuality, talks about bestiality as well, and the fact that God throws out the other nations for contaminating the land, and God warns the Jewish people, saying, if you do any of these actions, the land's also going to spit you out as well. So there are a number of things here. One is, again, we go through these forbidden relationships, the beginning of chapter 18, right, which continues with the forbidden relationship of homosexuality, bestiality, and because of these things, the land is contaminated, and it says that if you do any of these things, it's an abomination, right? It's pretty clear. As it says, by homosexuality, you should not lie with a man as one lies with a woman. It is an abomination. Now, keep in mind, it does not say the person is an abomination. It says the act, right? The act is an abomination. But it's so severe, it is so severe that the land becomes contaminated. And because the land became contaminated nation before the Jewish people were in the land of Israel, they got spit out because of it. So, there are a few things here. One is the connection to homosexuality, bestiality, to be spit to, in that the punishment is getting spiritually cut off and getting spit out of the land, right? The punishment is by homosexuality is skiwa, right? Is corporal punishment, means if there would be a temple today in the Sanhedrin in Jerusalem, that means that the person would be warned before doing this act. If they got warned and they said, "I don't care, I'm going to do it anyway," so then they would be thrown off a 3-story building, onto their head. If that didn't kill them, take a big rock, aim for their heart. They say if the left one doesn't get you, the right one will. So these acts, these perversions, and that's what they're called, these perversions are an abomination. And because they're an abomination, it got, the nation, right before the Jewish people were in the land of Israel, got them thrown out of the land. So I want to hit on this connection. Now, if you look at what was said before, we're talking about forbidden relationships, right? In verse 6, it says, any man shall not approach his close relative, uncover nakedness. I am Hashem. Nakedness of your father, nakedness of your mother, shall not uncover. Nakedness of your father's wife, nakedness of your sister, nakedness of your son's daughter, or your daughter's daughter, etc. All these relationships that a person has, you're not allowed to uncover their nakedness. And then it says, don't present any of your children passed through Molech. Do not profane the name of your God. I am Hashem. Now, what was Molech? Molech was an idol that was worshipped, and there's a difference of opinion exactly what it was. Either they sent children to walk over hot fire in front of the idol, or they threw children into the fire. Right? And the children died. And then it goes into this perversion of homosexuality, bestiality, etc. As well. Now, some want to say that, if you look at what was said before, is you have a number of relationships where you're not allowed to uncover the nakedness of your father, your father's mother, your father's wife, nakedness of your sister, right? Then it says, don't pass any children through the Molech. And then it says don't do, homosexuality, bestiality, etc. So the Ramban here mentions that's included here, like immorality. Its practice contaminated the land directly to the divine expulsion of the Canaanites. Now, some want to say that the connection between sexual immorality, right, by uncovering the nakedness of people who are not allowed to uncover their nakedness, and Molech, and this idol, right, it's compared, it's like immorality. Throwing these children amongst the fires, or into the fire, or walking over fire, whatever it was, is compared to immorality. Now, some want to say, well, it was idolatrous practices, to do this, right? So the following homosexuality, bestiality, right? Some people want to say, well, it's an idolatrous practice, and that's what it's doing here. But let's look at the context, right? As I always say, you have to look at what the context of what is being said. It's clear as day. Nobody disagrees. It's black on white, or white on black, usually black on white, right? It's black on white. You shall not lie with a man, verse 22, as one lies with a woman. It's an abomination. So they say context. Look what it was said before. It was talking about idolatry. This was an idolatrous practice. So the Ramban says that it's like immorality. Putting your kid, God forbid, through these fires in front of Molech, right, in front of this idol, the popular idol, right, in Canaan, by the Canaanites. And they put they handed their children to the priests, who would walk the child between the two bonfires. So, what's it doing? What's the verse doing after by homosexuality? What's the comparison to idolatry? Was it an idolatrous practice? The Ramban says no. Right? We know what the idolatrous practice is. We just said that. Was homosexuality an idolatrous practice? No. It's like immorality. This practice of idolatry, of putting your kid through the fires. It's not immorality. Right? It's not a forbidden relation. Homosexuality, bestiality, according to everyone, is forbidden by itself. Period. right? Don't pass go, don't collect 200. Has nothing to do with idolatry. The Ramban just says, what's this verse doing here? Okay, so this verse is saying it's like immorality. But if you would take that verse out, then these verses of homosexuality and bestiality would fit in straight away with these other verses. What are these other verses saying? These other verses are saying these are forbidden relationships. You're not allowed to uncover the nakedness of these different people. So, therefore, bestiality and homosexuality fits right in. It's immoral. So the question is not that the fact that it comes after this idol and what they did with the idol, that it's all about idolatrous practices. That's not the case. It's forbidden by itself, and it would have fit in straight away with what we said before, right? Everything is in context. So if you're telling me, don't uncover the nakedness of your father or your mother, or your father's wife, your sister, don't commit bestiality or homosexuality, that fits right in. It has nothing to do with idolatry. Just so happens, there's a verse that speaks about idolatry and how this idol was served and what they would do. So then the Ramban says that's a comparison. It's like immorality. Is it immorality like we said before? Is it an idolatrous practice to have homosexual relations in front of an idol? No. There are no idols like that. Right? The Torah doesn't speak of any idols like that. It's forbidden in and of itself. It's an abomination. Again, let's make clear. The act is an abomination, not the person. Now, that being said, so we clarified that point. Now, that being said, you have two terrible things going on here. You have homosexuality, and you have bestiality. Now, what happens if you do such a thing? So the Torah says, do not contaminate the land through any of these, immoral, forbidden relationships. Otherwise, you're going to get disgorged. Or, in the vernacular, you're going to get spit out of the land. Because I spit out the Canaanites. I got rid of the Canaanites, and I don't want you to do what the Canaanites did. Right? So you're not allowed to act in this way. So, yes, you're going to get spiritually cut off if you do these things. Yes, you're going to get capital punishment. You're going to get both. Right? Not only are you going to get killed in this world, you're going to lose your portion in the world to come. You're going to get spiritually cut off in the next world. Spiritually cut off means I have no portion. That's it. Right? You're finished. Now, this is pretty severe. Because not only are you getting corporal punishment, but the overall punishment, besides dying, is you're contaminating the land. Right? We're talking about the land of Israel. You're contaminating the land, and in my language, chump don't want it, chump don't get it. That means if you do this, you're going to get spit out of the land. So, people can't say, people want to say, this is a natural act. Right? Certainly bestiality is not a natural act. Man doesn't fit with animals. They can try, but they don't fit with animals. Different species. You want to have children? You need a man and a woman. This is biology 101. Or, you don't even need a man. Just take sperm, and she can get pregnant that way. But you need sperm from a man in order to impregnate a woman. This is, again, biology 101. So, the Torah calls it an abomination. This is not me. I didn't write this. The Torah says it's an abomination. It's a perversion. Now, others would like you to think, what's going on today, and what these people have as an agenda, is to say that it's normal. This is a normal act. This is normal behavior. And some people have such a strong tendency. What can they do? They have to act on it. It's just as a strong tendency between, a man and a man, that they will say as a man and a woman. Now, again, you can take the Torah to task here. I'm not the one who wrote it. I'm just reading it, so all you Karaites out there will be very excited. It says it's an abomination, and it's a perversion. So the Torah makes clear, and we have other proof for this, and we'll mention in a second, the Torah makes clear homosexuality is a perversion. And it is so severe if you do it in the land that the land will spit you out. Now, if you do it outside the land, does that mean it's permissible? No. It's also forbidden. Right? Just doesn't mean that the land's going to spit you out. The land of Israel is holy. You sit here and contaminate it by doing these different things. So, homosexuality is written in the same verse as bestiality. Right? Or the next verse is about bestiality. So, therefore, it calls it a perversion. Right? By homosexuality, calls it an abomination. Now, we can see bestiality as not being the norm. Right? There are people that, do it. How common it is, I don't know, but there are definitely people that do it. That there's no question. But what about homosexuality? Now, homosexuality, I'm going to say, well, it doesn't say it says it's a perversion. You're right. It says it's an abomination. Right? And being with an animal is a perversion. But everyone agrees that the Torah concludes and says if you do any of these things, any of these immoral things, you'll contaminate the land. Right? Whether it's a perversion or an abomination or both. So now let's dig in a little bit. Why would the Torah call homosexuality an abomination? Right? The other side, right? Others who do this or believe in it or think it's a good thing or whatever, they'll say it's a natural inclination. Right? Everybody's got an evil inclination. Everyone's got a good inclination. Some people are drawn, right, to certain bad character traits. We have good character traits also. But we'll talk about the bad character traits. There are many bad character traits a person can be drawn to. One is being about gaiva, being conceited. That's what I consider just about the worst of all bad character traits. Getting angry, also a bad character trait. Right? So there are a number of bad character traits that a person may be more susceptible to. That means we have to work very hard in order to uproot it. In other words, if we're born to certain parents, we're given certain DNA, and within that DNA, person got an anger gene. Right? He gets angry more than most people, let's say. So therefore, he's got, he may have more of a disposition towards that. Doesn't mean he has to act on it, but he's got a stronger disposition, okay? So even if he has a stronger disposition, God's going to say, I don't want you to give into it, even though I gave it to you. So even though you have the strong disposition, you're not allowed to act on it. But it's really part of me. It's a really very, very difficult thing to give up and to not do. You're 100% right. But if I act on it, can I say, well, God, you gave me this so strong, I can't overcome it. Can we use that as an excuse? Well, if we were Freudians today, which even though Freud's not so in vogue today, if we'd quote Mr. Freud would say, what can he do? He has to give in to temptation. That's the way he's born. That's part of his nature. So the Torah says, yeah, it might be part of his nature. It might be that he has a very strong disposition. But the Torah says, I don't care. It's a disposition I gave you, God says. It's something that you have to work on. And it may be very difficult to work on. So now, we're going to make a little bit of a jump here. Let's say the same thing by homosexuality. Now, we'll speak about why, it's an abomination and it's not normal. Right? But before we even get there, right, the other side will say, it is normal. A person can claim they've had that disposition, not attracted to women, for whatever reason. So they have a much stronger inclination, as a man towards men. So let's say a person does have that inclination. Now, it's been proven, right, that a person even with such an inclination can be helped. Right? They can be cured of it Is it easy? Oh no, it's not easy. But what's the difference? What's the difference between this bad trait and anger? Or being conceited? Or you fill in the blank, whatever bad trait it is. So some people will say, because I have that disposition, and because it is such a strong disposition, nonetheless, they'll say that they pinpointed a gene. In men, it's called the homosexual gene. Right? That they pinpointed, it says someone who gives in to being a homosexual, has certain DNA. Now, let's say that's true. Right? I don't think it's true, but let's say, for argument's sake, that that's true. Now, does that mean that it's impossible for the person to work on? Does that mean they're a goner? They're always going to be a homosexual? Doesn't mean that. Person can be treated. Might not be easy to do. Might not be easy to overcome. But what is the difference between, let's say, a homosexual gene and an anger gene? Or you fill in the blank, a conceited gene. Whatever it is. So you're going to say, person doesn't have that type of gene. So if we do a study, take 100 people that are 100% narcissist, right? It means they love themselves. They are 100% conceited, no question. Let's say we found 100 people, and you analyze their DNA. Could there be similarities in their DNA? Could be. Right? There could be. What if there aren't? You're going to say, see, science didn't prove it. Well, there are many things out there that science hasn't proven. That doesn't mean it's not true. If it's a leap of faith, it's this. You can say what you want. There are plenty of things science has not proven. So that being said, even if you want to say that there is this homosexual gene, that means that the disposition this person has is going to be that much more difficult to fight. I agree. But again, a homosexual gene is no different than any bad character trait a person has that he acts on. It just means he has more of a disposition, whatever it is. He's got a homosexual gene, he's got an anger gene, he's got a conceited gene, someone else got, a stealing gene, someone has another type of gene, whatever it is. Doesn't matter how powerful the urge is. We all have powerful urges that we're not allowed to act on. I don't care if he's got a stealing gene in him. He's not allowed to steal. Right? It's Torah prohibition. Whether in hiding, whether, he beat up granny, steal her purse, etc. Doesn't matter. It's a Torah prohibition. So a person has a disposition. What's the difference between that and homosexuality? Say, no, that's biological. Well, the other things are also biological. Right? It's inside yourself. No different. So, the Torah calls it an abomination. Now, the Torah does not call the person an abomination. Person is not an abomination. It can be called evil. It can be called a rasha. It can be called not knowing what he's doing. Right? Etc. Person is not an abomination. It's the act. Person can always do tshuva. Right? It's the act itself. So, how do I know it's not a natural urge? Even though, the rest of the world, obviously has an agenda. And they're the ones that are going to want to say it's totally natural. So, if we look at, go back to the book of Genesis, remember, God creates man. Right? God creates man. And then he creates woman. He takes woman out of man. The end of Genesis chapter 2. And the Torah says in verse 24, therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother, cling to his wife. They shall become one flesh. Now, that is the natural inclination. A man will want to cling to a woman and become like one unit. Can a man and a man become one unit in that sense? Well, they made it like that today. But if you want to perpetuate a world, meaning you want the world to continue, the Torah is everlasting. It's forever. So whatever the Torah tells you, right, it has to be everlasting. Now there are certain things that we don't do that the Torah says. Hey, we don't have a temple today, right? So there are no sacrifices. We don't do any sacrifices today. There are other things that may not apply just because there are circumstances where they don't apply. But if the circumstances would change, right, then it would go back to the way it was, right? Etc. So that being said, the Torah could not have made a normal inclination for a man to be with a man. If the Torah says you're supposed to cling to a woman and a man's supposed to cling to his wife, doesn't say a man's supposed to cling to a man, calls it an abomination. Simple explanation is, why does a man cling to his wife? Because that's a natural inclination, right? You cling to your wife. You do what you're supposed to do properly. You water the flower, so the flower will grow and flourish. If you don't work, a person doesn't work on their marriage will die, right? Because if you're only in it for physicality, that's it. Once, a woman starts to lose her beauty, starts to get older, right? It's not the same. Also, a person only marries for money, only lose interest, right? So it's not going to stick either. So it's something you have to work on, kind of like the flower. You have to work on it. You have to nurture it. Otherwise, it's going to die. But a man and a woman get together. What should be the natural outcome? There should be children. Now, not every woman, unfortunately, has the ability to have children. Some don't get married. Some have fertility issues. Some get pregnant and have miscarriages and, can't seem to keep the child till the end. But in general, the purpose of marriage is to have children. By non-Jews also, any Noahides out there, there's an obligation to have children, right? You can have them as you can use, contraception. You can have 5 years, 10 years in between. Doesn't really matter, but there's a mitzvah to populate the world. For a Jew, it's different. They have to have at least 2 children, a boy and a girl, to fulfill their obligation. But the world has to be populated. Now, if the vast majority of these people, in general, have this gene, so now the world at a tremendous disadvantage. The world's at a tremendous disadvantage because you don't have men and women together. You're not going to have kids. You're not going to have a next generation. We say, well, we'll take care of that problem. We don't need men. We just need sperm. Right? We have a sperm bank. No problem. Woman wants to have children. Right? So she'll do in vitro and she'll have a child. If she's able to. Or 1 or 2 or, whatever. But that's not natural either. And the reason it's not natural is because you don't have single families. Right? Single parents, meaning that a woman doesn't get married, she just does this, has a child, and doesn't get married. Right? That's not the way the Torah set out. Torah set out to have a normal family, right? Husband, wife, kids, etc. That is the norm. You're going to say, why is that the norm? Because the Torah tells me. Torah says a man should cling to his wife. That's the normal inclination. If the Torah would have said, or even would have hinted at the fact that a man-man relationship is normal, Torah would have said, right? But here the Torah says clear, and this is the only reference. It says a man should not lie with a woman like he would with lie with a man like he would with a woman. That's homosexuality. That's not the norm. What would happen if the vast majority of men did that? In theory, right? Forget in vitro. In theory, you'd have a major problem. That means if you had a whole population of men, being with men, that means women aren't going to get married. And women aren't going to have children. You tell me you can do it in vitro, who cares? But in the bigger scheme of things, that's not what's supposed to happen. Right? That's not what God wants. How do I know? Because Torah tells me. that you're supposed to cling to your wife. They're supposed to be one unit. It doesn't say man or man is supposed to be one unit. So they're rewriting history. They have an agenda, and their agenda is, this is the norm. You ever see the book, Johnny Has Two Fathers? That's the norm. That's what they want to say, is the norm. So that puts marriage, that certainly puts marriage in danger. Because they're going to say that's the norm. Well, you got men and men, women and women. Together women don't want to get married to men, so there's an inclination for women. Not going to have children, some do, some don't. They say, how do I know that? That's not an explicit verse. You're right. When the Torah says, don't go after the ways of the Egyptians, the rabbis tell us that's what it means. Tremendous immorality in Egypt. And one of the immoral things that they did was lesbianism. It's also bestiality. Look at Cleopatra. How does Cleopatra die? Right? Anyone who knows a little bit about history, you can Google this. Cleopatra dies because she wanted to have relations with a horse. They dropped the horse on her, and she died. So she got crushed. She got crushed by the horse. It's like, oh, I love you. Bam! Okay. Good way to end a good romance. Finished. Right? Horse killed her. So obviously there was, bestiality in Egypt as well. So the point is that they have an agenda. And their agenda is to say that this is normal. Well, if we want to be Bible thumpers, and we want to hold according to what the Torah says, that is not normal. Right? That is an abomination. The act is an abomination, and if everyone acted on it, if everyone had that gene, then guess what? We'd have no next generation. So that cannot be a normal inclination. Why would God create the world, and want the world to continue if he puts this into the world and, this idea into men? Right? When he puts this idea in the world, men run with it, and and there are hundreds and thousands of men who have this homosexual relation. You can try this Bible 101. You're not going to have children that way. Right? It's not going to work. So you're going to have a population issue. I can have in vitro. Not every woman does it. And by the time they want to do it, it could be they're too old also. And it doesn't work. So you're going to have a population shortage. That's what God wants. He'll let it happen if you do it. Right? Or maybe not. Depends if he wants to stop it or not. But if he doesn't stop it, then the next generation is tremendously in danger. We have enough problems as it is in the Western world without, with having almost a negative population birth. You got places, let's say in Russia, you got a major problem. Not only, people aren't having children, so the Russians have like a negative, have a negative birth rate, just about. And who's taking up the slack are the Muslims. Right? The Muslims, they're going to take over the country. It's only a matter of when. Because they're having 6, 7, 8 kids. The Russians are having 1.2 if they're lucky. Probably less than that. So they're finished. 20, 30 years, the country's going to be Muslim. That's just what's going to happen. Right? Just do the math. So, again, that's because they don't have kids. If they're married. If they're not married, or even if they do get married, husband and husband. Let's say they do get married. So, most of them are not going to have kids either. Maybe some will, but, it's going to be even less than what the worst birth rate is. So if it's going to be less, it cannot be. That's what God had in mind for creation. God would not put people in the world to have the world be destroyed in order that, the reason being that they don't have kids. Right? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Could it happen? Yeah, in theory it could. God could say, I'm not going to stop it. Okay. I don't have to make any wars or floods or any of these things. You want to do that? Well, that's fine. That's fine, and that's what will happen. Not only that, but you see in that community, right? If you don't practice safe sex in that, in that community, so there's a disease called AIDS, right? You can get AIDS and die from it also. And plenty have died in the homosexual community. So, someone once told me many years ago, you can't tell me that's the reason. You got a better explanation? Why should it be? Listen, if someone had it, get it through drug use also. Sharing needles and all that. Yeah, that could also happen. But make no mistake, unprotected sex that's what it's going to lead to. All right, again, this is biology, maybe 102, 101.5, whatever you want to call it. This is what happens. Someone says, you can't tell me that. You can't say that's a direct result. Got a better idea? So, they have an agenda. And that agenda is going to be to tell you that it's normal. And we have seen 100% that it's not normal. It's something you have to work on. Right? It's like any other bad character trait. You have to work on getting rid of it. It's very strong. It's a powerful urge. This, that. Yeah. No different than anger. It's no different than being conceited. No different than stealing. Person got a tremendous desire, to steal. And also, what about someone gets married? Right? Someone's married. You think he doesn't have a desire for other married women? Or he doesn't have a desire for any other women? Of course he's got a desire for women. He's got to work on it. If he acts on it, then what can I do? I have this desire. I got this womanizing gene. Even though I got married, I want to be with other women. Are you going to say, well, he's got this gene, can't help it. What can he do? No, we don't say that. We say, no. This woman's going to divorce him. I don't know why she'd stay with him, but she'll divorce him. You want to be monogamous, fine. You don't want to be monogamous, I'm not interested. I mean, if you are interested, okay, something else. But, most women are not going to be that interested. So if they're not interested, I can say that's normal. It's a desire. This is a desire. You want to say it's more natural than a man's desire for a woman? That's going to be hard to say. Right, from what we said before. But now let's take it one step further. Not only do we see it's not a normal thing, as we saw before, not only is it called an abomination, but if you do it in the land of Israel, what's the result? Spiritual contamination. The physical act pollutes the land of Israel. You will be spit out of the land. So, if you look in Tel Aviv today, Tel Aviv has a huge population of homosexuals. Very, very big population. Now, if God forbid, Jewish people that are in the land of Israel get overtaken and get spit out of the land, this is what the Torah says. Right? That if we act in these ways, the Jews could get spit out of the land. There could be other reasons Jews could get spit out of the land. Right? Let's say they don't keep Shabbos properly. They don't do other things. God can say, fine, that's it. I've had it. I'm going to knock them out. Right? Usually, probably not the case. It has to be something pretty egregious. Something pretty serious. The God says, okay, I can't take this in my backyard anymore. I'm going to knock them out. They're going to go out of the land of Israel. And when the Messiah comes, as is a Medrash and Tehillim and Psalms, that says, when the Jewish people... when the Messiah comes, Jewish people are not going to be in the land of Israel. They're going to be in the desert. Messiah is going to bring them in. A little bit hard to fathom that, right? Especially what's going on today, regardless of how many nations surround the land of Israel. But still a little bit difficult to fathom that could happen. Nonetheless, if they act in this way, and if they want, if they want to show themselves in the palace of the king, and they want to have one of their parades, downtown Jerusalem, this is a scary thing. Why? Because, first of all, we mentioned they have an agenda. They want to do this, that's fine. Why in the world? You don't really see this by almost anything else. Why in the world they want to parade outside and show the world? People who are thieves, they don't go doing that. Pick any other bad characters, right? You don't see anyone doing that, parading around, showing how great they are, by what they do. So it makes sense why they want to do it, because they want to show it's normal. They want to show that, there's nothing wrong with it. And that we can come out in public. They shouldn't be scorned. They shouldn't be mocked at. But you know what? When you're doing it in the palace of the king, and no one says anything, and no one protests, by protesting I mean, if they were walking downtown Jerusalem, people should be there, saying Tehillim, not confronting them, not throwing stones, nothing, but protesting to show that it's wrong. Now you might say, if I protest, is it going to stop them? No, it's probably not going to stop them. But at the end of the day, what could God say? Right? What could God say? God says in my Torah, it says it's an abomination. Now, these people are walking downtown Jerusalem, and they're having this parade flaunting this abomination. Right? Flaunting this idea which is an abomination. Now, that being the case, if nobody is there to protest, if nobody's there and everyone gives it a blank check and lets them go by, and no one says there's nothing wrong with it, imagine what God's thinking. I gave this land back to the Jewish people after 2,000 years. There have been pogroms, there have been holocausts, there have been terrible things. I gave them back the land. Right? There are many, it's the biggest Jewish population now in the world. And okay, maybe 10%, are Orthodox, are religious, fine. But, what are the rest of the people doing? If you have a big, percentage of the population, or significant, doesn't even have to be big, it's significant percentage of the population that chooses this lifestyle. And they're parading it in the palace of the king, and nobody says anything. Meaning nobody protests. Nobody shows their disdain, their dislike. Not because we're just against them to be against them. There's only one reason anyone should come out against them. That's because the Torah says it's forbidden. It has nothing to do with anything else. You want to say the Torah is anti that? Yeah, it is. It's also anti-pig. It's also anti, lending with ribbis, lending money to another Jew and taking interest. Right? It's anti a lot of things. But if the manufacturer himself wrote it, God knows what he's doing. So he just mentioned a number of reasons why this is bad. So if that's true, and they're parading down the street, I should be there handing them out Tootsie Rolls. I should give them a lollipop. Bring out the concessions for ice cream. You gotta bring down the law and say it is forbidden. Again, I'm not saying physical confrontation. I'm not saying, you should start up with them in any way. But if you're in the palace of the king, and this is going on, and nobody says anything, even if the end result you're not going to get, and nobody protests to show that it's wrong, what's the curse? What's the curse that the Torah says? The curse that the Torah says is, you act like that in the land, you will be spit out like the Canaanites. And that is why they are spit out. So again, in my language, chump don't want it, chump don't get it. That means we could get spit out of the land, God forbid, because of these people, and we're not saying anything against it. And we're not showing any form of protest. Even if you say the protest isn't going to do anything, we have to, again, think in God's mind. And think of all the goodness that God has done, gave us the land back, and all that. It's the strongest Torah community in the world, no question about it. And now this is what you do. This is what's being done, and nobody says anything, and people are afraid to open their mouths, and afraid to protest, to show that they're against it. I don't even want to know what the repercussions are. Last year, just gave an example, last year when this happened, so there weren't so many repercussions in the land of Israel. Right? There were attacks here and there, but we didn't see necessarily a direct connection. A short while after this parade, what happened? There were a number of people killed in Miami. right, in Florida, in one of these establishments, right, one of these clubs. Now you might say, well, that's a coincidence. Yeah, we don't believe. We, as in Jews, Orthodox Jews, we don't believe in coincidence. We believe things happen for a reason, right? And there's a connection. We don't always see the connection. But someone goes into a nightclub that, is a nightclub for these type of people. And he goes in shooting up the place. He could have gone anywhere. Could have gone to any disco. Right? Any nightclub. So you might say, it just so happened he hit that one. Well, it was premeditated. It wasn't like he was shooting darts. Okay, I want to kill so many people, in a nightclub, in Miami. Where am I going to do it? So we got this nightclub, that nightclub, a fourth nightclub. He's got a whole target, stands 50 feet away, throws the darts, and he ends up, okay, a homosexual nightclub, that's what I'm going to hit. You think that's how it happened? No. Right? Obviously not. Person went in a nightclub, had an agenda. You want to say he's messed up, he's this. You can say whatever you want. He hit that type of place. So that's a major wake-up call. Major wake-up call. Because it's not like he went into a restaurant. Not like he went into a bar. Not like he went into a movie theater. I mean, there are people who do that also. Right? But in this case, he went to a specific place. And that specific place, just so happens, was a place for homosexuals. Right? Known place. So, it may not have happened in the land of Israel. I mean, God forbid what other repercussions there could be. In the land itself, God should, have a tremendous amount of compassion on us. But he made a point. He absolutely made a point. Give one other example. Many years ago, dating myself now, more than 20 years ago, there was an earthquake in San Francisco. Right? A very, very strong earthquake. Right? Stopped the World Series, actually. Right? Go back, way back when, it was the A's in the World Series. Nonetheless, in San Francisco, that was the epicenter of this earthquake. Now, everyone knows what goes on in San Francisco. Even if you're not from that, even if you're not from San Francisco, everybody knows. So they say, wow, what a coincidence, that's where the epicenter was. It's not a coincidence. When these things happen, the Rambam, others bring down, it's a wake-up call. Every place has its, missile where it's going to hit. We don't always understand why. In certain places, why. Some things, though, I think are pretty obvious. What is it connected to? Whatever, okay, we can have a discussion. But if the epicenter is in a place of Sin City, and we all know what goes on there, that's not a coincidence. Totally not a coincidence. How it manifests itself, why, when, all right, we don't know this. We don't know when these things are going to happen. That's for God to mete out. That's not for us. But if you want to say, that's a coincidence. Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans, that was a coincidence. What goes on in New Orleans? Also a pretty bad city. Right? For a lot of things. Is it a coincidence? It's not a coincidence. At some point, God's justice just says, all right, I've had enough. Everybody out of the pool. That's it. I've had it. When, what, where, how, we don't know. But make no mistake, these things are not called natural disasters. They are disasters caused by the one who caused them, which is God himself. So if it happens in a specific place, guess what? There's a reason. And the reason is because God can't tolerate it anymore. So I want to just remind people I have I made a course, a six module course called Discover Your Biblical Path. It's about people coming out of idolatry, that they can make a decision whether they want to be a Noahide or actually convert to Judaism. What does it mean to be a Noahide? What does it mean to convert to Judaism? About the Jewish holidays, a few other things, as well as finding a rabbi, finding a community. And I have 7 interviews there of people who are in the process of conversion, and people who didn't convert stayed as Noahides. You can take a look at my Facebook page, my Facebook fan page, Beyond Orthodox Conversion to Judaism. There's also one Beyond Noahides. I also give classes to converts and to Noahides. And I have an Intro to Kabbalah class, which we've spoken about why God created the world, the purpose of man, purpose of the nations, reincarnation. Now we're speaking about the importance of Torah. We're going to speak about the Shema after that and prayer. In general, that's every Tuesday night, 9 o'clock New York time. I also have 2 question and answer sessions. Tuesday, usually at 10 o'clock in the morning, New York time. Thursday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, New York time. And every Wednesday, we're doing, I do a live video on Tanakh Talk, TENAKTALK on YouTube, and at TanakhTalk.com on controversial issues. This week it's going to be about TV and entertainment and sports, whether a person's allowed to do any of that, etc. And anyone who wants to contact me, feel free. Contact me at rabbichaimkaufman@gmail.com, RABBICHAIMKOFFMAN @gmail.com. Wishing everyone a great Shabbos.